So everyone can take a seat. If you have a cell phone, please turn it to silent. My name is Mitzi, and I am the funeral celebrant who is here today to help you celebrate the life of God. I want to start off with a Scottish salutation. I don't know Scottish, so I'm not doing it in that. Look to this day, for yesterday is already a dream, and tomorrow is only a vision. But today, well lived, makes every yesterday a dream of happiness, and every tomorrow a vision of hope. Look well, therefore, to this day. Such is the salutation for the daughters. We come together today to honor Donald Culture Fraser Hay. We have gathered here today not only to grieve the loss of Donald, but to give thanks for his life among us. We are gathered here today not only to mourn.
There's nothing to stop here. Check if the device is on your cell phone.
That's him, by the way. There's no doubt. He has something to say. And you know that, Gene. Yeah, always gets the last bit in there. We have gathered here today not only to consider the shortness and uncertainty of life on earth, but to give thanks for the gift of life, and the gift of family, and the gift of friendship. Let us find comfort this day as we come together to share love and sweet memories with one another. After all I've learned about Donald, I can hear him saying this: I am a Scot. I do not need your approval, your opinion, your attitude, or even your notice of me. I do, however, need you to step aside and get out of my way. Great things are in my immediate future. Watch me do exactly what you said I could not. Can you all see him saying that? Yeah. Very much so. Yeah. Donald Culture Fraser was born in Glasgow, Scotland on June 24th, 1936. He was the only child of Donald Fraser Hay and Mary Brown Hay. He grew up, and forgive me if I mispronounce this, in the Cartine neighborhood of Glasgow during the Second World War. And he spent his summers in Largs, on the west coast of Scotland. Donald's mother, Mary Brown Hay, came from the Maidens, a fishing village on the west coast of Scotland. This village was a home to a long line of cobblers. She met Donald's father, Donald Fraser Hay, through his sister. Both women worked at Turnberry Golf Club, which was just up the hill in Maidens. Mary Brown, like so many cultures before her, was christened at Kirkhoff Aid Parish Church, just 2 or 3 miles from the Maidens. Donald's parents were also married there, and his parents decided that is where he was going to be baptized and christened. So they went there that day for that. But the minister, even though he knew that they wanted to call him Donald Fraser Hay, had other ideas. So he instead christened him Donald Culture Fraser Hay. And that was that. They moved forward with him having 2 middle names. Now, when he was a teenager, he met the wonderful Jean. He met her while she was living on Alexandra Parade, one of the main streets in Scotland, right? And you all would go out there on weekend nights and kind of check each other out. It was kind of all the teenagers would go and walk up and down and check each other out. And you saw him, and that was it, wasn't it? Yeah, that's all it took. So they started hanging out together, and they spent a lot of time together, and it just really worked for them. So that was wonderful. Now, he finished school, and he worked in the pathology department of the Royal Infirmary in Glasgow. He was following his dad's footsteps. He was drafted into the British Army in 1955 and served in the Medical Corps in Singapore and Malaysia. Now, after his tour in the military, he came back and started working in pathology again, and he decided to marry Jean in 1959. They married in Glasgow, Scotland. Together, they had 4 children. Fraser, who was born in November of 1960, Stephen, who was born in February of 1963, Cora Jane, who was born in December of 64, and Jacqueline, who was born in July of 67. Now everybody knows y'all's ages, so I understand. But we had to get it out there so we all wouldn't feel too old. He had 2 best friends when he was in Scotland. Ian O'Donnell, who has since passed away, and then Ian Dykes, who they call Dango. Now Dango is still alive. They were so close that the 3 of them got together, bought houses in a neighborhood called Bishopbriggs, a new housing development, just in the suburbs of Glasgow, and moved with their wives and children there. They were all very close and shared that time together. Now, he obtained training as a medical technologist. His work was deemed to be exceptional. Because of that, he was asked to move to Canada to teach histology at the Memorial University in St. John's, Newfoundland. He worked there for 5 years. He was offered a position in Montreal to work in cancer research at McGill University, and he moved his family there. In 1977, Donald was offered a job in Georgetown. Now, this job in Georgetown meant that he needed to move his family again, and he did, moving them to Maryland. He served as the administrator of Georgetown's pathology department until he retired in 2001. Retirement found Donald not willing to just sit around. He did volunteer work and even served as a docent at the Smithsonian Ripley Center. He was a volunteer usher at Arena Stage. When the museum opened in Washington, D.C., he thought he would apply for a job as a volunteer there. But he couldn't understand why they were asking him all these questions. He thought, wow, it's really tough to become a volunteer in this place. Soon as that interview was over, they offered him a job. He did not realize he was applying for a job, but he did accept one working part-time, and that is where he would stay until it closed in 2019. I learned some things about Donald from his family, and I'm going to share those with you now. Some of them you may know, most of them you probably don't. I'm going to share them all with you. He adores his wife. She was his princess. He would cook for you, dote on you, did everything he can to make sure you were happy. Good with that, wasn't he? That's really good. He was a tea drinker. What did he put in his tea? Anybody know? Sugar. Milk and sugar, exactly. That's what he put in it. I'm kind of that way, but I use cream. I don't know. Half and half. You gotta have that in it. Anybody know what his favorite protein was? Smoked fish. Yeah, he loved his smoked fish. That was just something he just couldn't get enough of. Now here's one that I had not heard that much about until it was said to me. He liked a certain vegetable that was pickled. Anybody know what that was? Onions.
Pickled onions.
Pickled onions. He loved those. I never heard of them before. But Jackie tells me they're very good. So there you go. He also was partial to a certain sweet. Anybody know what that sweet was? Licorice. Right, he loved his black licorice. I don't know why, because it's ungodly, but he really liked it. So that's good. He had a big connection with the water. And this was because he grew up on the water on the west coast in Scotland in larges. No, not large. Large.
Large.
Okay, so I have trouble with pronouncing things. Oh, I'm so sorry. It is large. Okay, good. Now, he traveled a lot when he was in the British Army. He went to Kenya, Uganda, and various other countries. He was very proud of his career and had followed in his father's footsteps, and that meant the world to him. When Donald's sons were young, I understand they played, I think you all called it football, but it was soccer. Soccer, yeah, y'all played soccer. And along with his good friend Jeff Rowley, he coached y'all's teams. He also, this is a little known fact, was a member of the Point Claire Men's Club soccer team. It was a semi-pro team. They were the second division champs of the Montreal Metro in 1976. And I know none of you knew that. Now, when he was living in Canada, he would take the family camping. They all liked to camp. They had a pop-up camper. And he would take this pop-up camper, and off they would go to Lake Huron or Lake Erie. And they would camp around the lake so that the kids could have fun playing in the sand dunes and going in the water. I have a feeling the water's probably pretty chilly out that way, wouldn't it? Yeah, not too bad. There you go. It was, I can imagine. Oh, that's not good. I understand though, he really loved taking you guys on adventures, that was a huge thing for him. That he really loved the time that he would spend with his kids going on adventures. And those adventures, meant doing lots of things together. They not only camped, they went fishing and crabbing together too. That was something they liked to do as a family. Now, Donald and Jean liked to do something together. They would go to Bermuda.
Yeah.
He loved going to Bermuda and would go there almost every year for many years, I understand. Many years. And he stayed at the Salt Kettle Cottages. Yeah. And you would go every year at the same time, along with a bunch of other people, and you all became friends with other couples, which made that vacation even better. So that was a really good thing. He purchased his house in Camden in 1977 and lived there until he moved with Jean to a senior living community this past September. Now, when the kids were growing up, he always had a dog. But if you asked him, he would say it wasn't his dog. He was tolerating the dogs because of the kids. But there was two dogs for sure. Sam, the chocolate lab Dalmatian, and Dougal, the chocolate lab. Now, that wasn't to be outdone because Jackie had a thing for cats. So she got this cat. And usually that means when you have a cat, you're the one taking care of it. Didn't quite work that way with her. It ended up being Donald and Jean who took care of that cat for most of its 22 years of life. So they were really the cat parents. And that cat, by the way, was named Cassie. And that cat lived with them. So he was kind of a cat person too, even though he would never admit it. He loved being outdoors. When they moved to this area, he would take the kids camping in Assateague and Rehoboth Beach, and they would go to Ocean City to go on rides. That was pretty cool. Excuse me. Something up here is getting me. He had a very close relationship with his cousins, Betty, who he called Wee Betty, and Rena. Now, Betty has passed away, but Rena, she is still alive and living in Glasgow. Betty would come to the States to visit him, and he would go there to visit them. He made notations in his book, in his phone book, and in his phone book, he noted birthdays and anniversaries. And he was so close to Betty that next to the date that his parents died, he put down Betty died in December of 2014. So they were very close growing up. Now he retired as administrative pathology from Georgetown University the Friday before he turned 65. So that was pretty cool planning that out. He liked to attend his daughter's classes where they had a Scottish professor. He liked to listen to him talk. He loved to fish. Anybody know what type of fish he would catch that he would call a doormat? Flounder. Yeah, he would call that doormats. I guess they look like that. I don't know. I'm not much of a fisherman myself. Now he had a boat. It was a Bayliner trophy, and he kept it down by the Pentagon at the Columbia Island Marina. He didn't take the boat out much during the week, but he would go there and sit on it and have lunch. He loved that boat, and he would do that all the time. That was something he enjoyed too. When he retired, he sold his boat because he was ready to move on to new things. Some of those new things were bird houses and bird feeders that he had at his house. He had them all around the house, on the porches and the garden, and he loved to sit and watch them. He knew which birds were coming in, what type they were, what kind of food they would eat, and how many babies they would have. And he would tell anybody who would listen, and even if you didn't want to listen, he'd still tell you. He was always sharing that with you. Now, he was a very handy man, usually. Usually, he was pretty handy. And he liked to do things around the house. One of the things he decided to do one day was to trim some branches on the tree. Now, I don't think it's wise for many of us to get on a ladder and trim a tree branch because we don't know how to do that. That's why you pay people. But no, he said, I'm going to do it. So he throws the ladder up against the tree, climbs the ladder, starts cutting the branch. And then he realized, right before he cut through it, that the ladder was on the branch he was cutting. Well, the ladder starts to fall. He jumps to another branch and grabs it. And then thought, if I drop to the ground, I'm ruining Jean's furniture and she'll kill me. So he swung over to another branch and then was able to lower himself to a safe spot on the ground from there. So, did you know all about that? Yeah. Kind of sounded like something he would keep to himself. I thought, but, I heard about it. So I had to share it. His daughter Jackie tells me that he was a serial volunteer and loved that he could give back to the community. He was very close to his best friend, Dan Hartman. They loved to make jokes together and laugh together and do fun things together. Matter of fact, they liked to share a bottle of Malbec with each other, a type of wine. Now they would go to a local restaurant, Gordados, okay? And when they went to that restaurant and would go in, they would introduce each other. Donald would say, "This is my father, Dan." Or Dan would get something out before him and say, "This is my grandfather, Don." So they liked to joke around and they had a really close relationship doing things like that. It was great. They both thought it was very funny, right? Now he had season tickets to the DC United, but he didn't go that often. Instead, he seemed to feel it was better to just kind of watch them on TV, and that's what he did. Now he liked to watch some certain shows on TV. Jeopardy, he watched that from the 1980s up until his passing. So he really liked that show, Jeopardy. He also liked to watch MSNBC and any soccer game that would come in. I understand he liked to cook because he liked to take care of you. Well, what's the thing that he cooked the most in Scotland? Right.
Ham and eggs.
Ham and eggs. Everything was fried. Everything was fried. The man couldn't do anything but fried food. So everybody had to have fried foods. But then, in the 1990s, he started getting a little more health conscious. So he decided that he could actually make fish without frying it. And he started making other things that were more healthy. Family was the most important thing to him. When he would go and visit Betty and Rena in Scotland, their husbands would come pick him up at the airport. And you know what they always brought him? fish that had smoked all night long. And he was so happy that he would have that fresh smoked fish. He usually eat it way before they made it back to their house. He really enjoyed that. When he was young, he enjoyed drinking a beer too. Anybody know what kind of beer he would drink? Guinness, exactly. Makes sense. He drank Guinness. But then, as he got older, he kind of got away from that and would just drink wine every now and then, usually red wine. He spoke with Dango, his friend in Scotland, every Sunday. That's pretty incredible. Every Sunday to sit and spend time on the phone with somebody you cared about so deeply. And Dango, in turn, thought it was really funny to call Donald Duck. So he was Donald Duck. And I'm sure that is something that he found pretty amusing too. Now, he would go to Scotland several times a year. He did that up until his mother passed in 2002. And then it was kind of hard to go back. He loved to do things around the house. When they bought the house, it was a 3-bedroom. He had 4 kids. Now, those of us who have kids know that kids sharing a bedroom does not necessarily always work. So he took his unfinished basement and he made it into bedrooms so each of his kids could have a room of their own. So I think that was a pretty nice thing Dad did to do that. He also built a brick pathway in his yard. He was so very proud of that. It turned out it was absolutely perfect. Now, as he got older, it wasn't that perfect. It wasn't. I heard it was.
It was a patio. That was no perfect.
I was just being nice.
It wasn't a professional, was it? But he tried. So
No,
that
he wasn't a perfectionist, so he was able to do so much.
Because it doesn't really matter what it looked like as long as he did it. Very good. Well, there you go. We found out the truth now. Everybody knows. Now, when I understand when you guys were living in the senior community, that he always liked to get donuts. And he would buy a box of donuts to bring back. And he did that just so he could talk to people. He would go around the community and offer donuts to people just so he could talk to them. He loved talking with others so much. And I understand chocolate donuts were one of his favorites. Yeah, that was good. Now, I also heard that when you would go to dinner at the senior center, you knew that he would take forever to get back to your apartment. So you would say, I'm going back to the apartment, I'll see you there. And maybe 20 minutes or so later, he'd show up because he was always busy talking with everyone. Yeah, so we all know he was very much into talking with other people. And he tremendously enjoyed living there. He was very happy there. So that's a little bit about his life. Now, I would really like it if Dan would come up and share with us some of his feelings and his thoughts.
Thank you very much. Anyone who doesn't speak Hungarian, please leave because we will be delivered not just accent, but perfect grammar in Hungarian, which doesn't exist, by the way. It's first of all, I'd like to explain one thing. I'm sure all of you are very worried to the fact that I'm wearing white, whereas all of you are either dark or black. I would like to apologize, and there's a good reason. Part-time, we live in California, so we left California in underwear, as usually local natives do. And this is the nicest thing I could think besides wearing underwear. So. And the other reason I'd like to say is that I was not prepared to come for a funeral, certainly not the one of my best friend, probably. This is a bad trick, and I'm angry with him still. He was supposed to be around, even though he's perhaps 10 years or so my senior. Made no difference because he was always younger than I was. He still is. Don and I met a long time ago, 50 years ago, 1973. And after this wonderful presentation, I'd like to fill in the gaps with lots of lies. And the reason for that is because, one, I cannot remember for sure what happened. Number two, I'd rather lie than tell the truth. It's so much easier. All right. Don used to say that in the morning he would open the newspaper and look at the obituary to see whether he was present. And that was very funny. It's no longer funny because now I'm sure he's somewhere there. Too many jokes end up in serious things. My mother once, rest in peace, met an old man on the road who spoke French to her for some reason. My mother spoke French. And he said, for some reason, they tried to avoid each other without knocking into each other. Then the old man stopped and he said, Madame, la vie est sérieuse, which means life is serious. That has nothing to do with anything, by the way. I just simply forget the rest of the line, so I feel it. But it's true that life is serious. And Don and I laughed all the time, until perhaps now. I'm sure he's still laughing, but it's hard. After this obituary joke, I want to tell you that to try to fill in the gaps that we just heard, again, full of life. I knew that Donald was born in Scotland, and I knew quite a lot about his background, his military service in Malaya and Singapore. And in fact, I want to tell you that quite a lot of my present vocabulary and my family's vocabulary is interspersed with Scottish or Malayan words. Now, whether it's true or not, I don't know. I told you I'll tell you lots of lies. And one example is, what So what does that mean? All my kids say what to each other. And it turns out that we picked it up somewhere from the Malaysian or Tagalog or whatever, or from Singapore, where the natives were talking to one another. Simply asked what's going on. So what is something that is part of my family's tradition now. And they all came from Donald. There were many other words and phrases that we acquired, and they changed not by just the accent, but because of where they came from. But it was still funny. What kind of things? I don't know if you ever heard songs from Don that started with Mrs. McFitty. Oh, looks like someone there. I'm almost there. The lights are interesting. So Mrs. McFitty is one of the things. No, I'm not going through. And we were singing. And so I met Donald pretty much 2 days after I met him in 1973 in Canada, Montreal at McGill University. He was singing Mrs. McFitty by the whole thing. So from then on, actually, I picked it up. And from then on, every now and then, we reminded each other that Mrs. McFitty and so on. He was hilarious. He was one of the funniest men I ever met. Excellent sense of humor that he inherited, well, probably from both parents. I remember his father vaguely, and certainly remember his mom who came to visit. And I would just like to mention that what his mom was telling about herself and her husband. At that time, her husband was still alive. And she said that she would like to have her ashes sprinkled in front of a liquor store. And the reason is because they would be sure that Donald, her husband, would come to visit. I I think this is a very old joke. Maybe more. Any old joke is new. So I think you. I mean, we laughed for 50 years. And I'm still laughing, even though I shouldn't, because he's gone. He's gone before time. Being 10 years my senior, I thought he would live forever. He didn't, and it came very suddenly. And I know his loving family really that and appreciates that as much more than I do. Let me tell you a little bit of what happened after 1973. I spent 5 years there with Martin Lewis, who was the chairman, a Welshman, and he actually brought a whole group together. It was a cancer research unit at McGill University. And I applied and I got the job as a graduate student. At that time I was very obese with sideburns. In those days sideburns were excusable. Literally the first day that I came in, I met Donald. A very strange accent and he was joking. And after that we became good friends, believe it or not. I knew everything about his jokes, his families, I knew some about his fishing. Not everything, perhaps. And some of the things I knew or I'm knowing, I'm not going to share with you. But that's friendship. Everybody knows a little bit of something. It reminds me of the whole thing about this darkness and there's an elephant in the room. Different people are feeling different things. Oh, I can feel the tail. Oh, no, this is a trunk. So everybody has a different idea of what this is. So this is a plethora of things that one knows about a person, but you can never put it together. Only those closest to him will know him fully. I knew him a little bit. It took me 50 years to know just a little. After 5 years at the cancer research unit, Donald moved on with Martin Lewis to, well, actually via Canada, which was already mentioned. Moved on to Georgetown University. And in fact, he kept the position open for me because I stayed behind in Canada. And I joined the group 1 year later, but it was Donald who kept that position open for me, for which I'm grateful. It so happened that that position, while staying empty, so to speak, was promised to somebody else. And I was ready to come down with 1 child, 1 truck, and 1 green plant. And there wasn't going to be any jobs for me. But Donald kept it. He told the powers that be that, look, you promised him a job, you keep it. And they kept the job open. And the rest is history, not very good history, because it wasn't that easy. I mean, the 2 groups, the group that came with Donald from McGill to Georgetown, sometimes had seen frictions. And the reason is because the old ones who were there before were used to a certain way of life, and the new group came in with new ideas. And Don could always bridge these things because his personality was so great. He always loved, he was loved by people, and he was a good man. And I'm saying good man, which is not extraordinary in general, but I think that most people are not thoroughly good as Don was. He was very kind on the inside, for sure. Could be rough on the outside, but always good, always loyal to his friends, and always very, very hilariously funny. Those years that followed at Georgetown, something like 20 years, before his retirement finally, were wonderful. Don was the administrator. He had 4 numbers, and he kept the books and kept the department running very well, even though originally he was trained as a pathologist or histologist, but he could do that wonderfully. So after 20 years, he retired, and that was the first time I was asked to make a speech. I know, just as sorry as you are to have me doing the second speech. I made a mess of it. It was done in a restaurant. I was mumbling, and Nobody laughed, nobody understood. What is he saying? Same as now. But Donald laughed. He knew what I meant by Mrs. McFitty. He didn't have to. And it was great. And again, this man protected the department, was loyal. He went into battles with people that believed that didn't do right. In other words, if they were politicians or they tried to harm the department, he wouldn't let them. He would go and fight, even though his career sometimes was in jeopardy. He would fight the chairman, he would fight the dean, and they were actually terrified of him, and rightly so. Because he was a just man. He could tell right from wrong. By the way, most of us can do that, but not everybody could follow through. Other little details, which I'm not going to bore you with you, but I'll tell you anyway. The fact that yes, he was a great fisherman, and he took out many of the people he met, members of the department, their families fishing, and they all remembered him. When I said that Don passed to some of his families, they were very upset, and the kids were now grown up said, I remember, he took us fishing. He was a very funny man. He had a lovely boat, and we had fantastic times. And that was true. There is a man who perhaps loved everybody, but definitely everybody loved him. There's an Italian saying, and I'll translate, just in case I have the wrong accent, which says, friend of everybody, friend of nobody. That was not true with Donald. He was the sole exception. Friend of everybody, and everybody's friend. So he was friend. Well, I want to say that, in summary, to the relief of all of you, that I miss Donald, and I know there is no view for anybody. I miss him very much. There's a big hole in my soul which would be difficult to fill. And I want to say that if there's a universe somewhere, and apparently there are multiple universes if you ever read science fiction, and they claim that perhaps people's lives are not so isolated, and after death there is something, some consciousness survives. Then I hope that Don and I can sit down and have a glass of wine. Well, we'll have alcohol-free beer, whatever is latest, but he enjoyed it tremendously. Rest in peace, my friend.
Recording. Are you ready? No. Fine. I'll do my best.
I'm not quite as good at doing speeches, I have to actually read them, so Dan's exceptional. So, okay, so where do I start? I'm a Hay, so I'll do my best not to make it go too long. That's my joke. From my earliest memories of my father, he was bigger than life, from Scotland to Newfoundland to Montreal, then to DC. When my father was offered a position teaching histology, the microscopic study of tissue, at a college in Newfoundland, we immigrated from Scotland to Canada. We as a family became bonded on this beautiful but barren island where the glaciers of the Ice Age pushed all the topsoil into the ocean. My parents left the safety and warmth of their community and the verdant Scotland and landed on this incredibly infertile island. My mother and father were just 31 and 32. Could be wrong, and Stephen, you can't correct me on whatever I'm saying. My mother and father were 31 and 32, and they had 4 children. Jacqueline was a baby. I was but 3. Stephen and Fraser were 5 and 7. I'm asking. We were our own tribe in Newfoundland. On weekends, my father would take us on all these long drives and walks in Newfoundland. We were so lucky if we could see a massive iceberg floating out in the ocean. or spot puffins on the rocks. We would go out blueberry picking. I mean, we did so many things. It was amazing. It was, but now as an adult and having children, it's now apparent to me how hard he had to work to keep 4 children busy. So to give my mom a break, on the weekends, he would take all 4 of us to the lab, and I put that in quotations, we called it the lab. He would set us up in a reel-to-reel film and put us at the lab tables, and it was our job to scrape the paraffin wax off the lab tables where the students had learned to section and sample and stain their specimens, or their, I don't know, is that what we call it? Not specimens, and view them under the microscopes. Then on Sunday nights, he would also give my mother a break, and I might not be right about this, but a break from cooking. And we would all take, first we would take a break all around. He would take us and we'd all go take a bath together. And this is our other joke, whether we needed it or not, once a week, whether we needed it or not. and Daddy would orchestrate making banana sandwiches on white bread with butter and sugar. Then dressed in our matching pajamas, we'd turn on the black and white TV and gather around and watch the wonderful world of Disney together. And those were, in Newfoundland, those were, nice memories. So raising 4 kids when you were barely a kid yourself must have been daunting. But my parents' young energy was an asset. In the backyard in Newfoundland, Daddy would build ice rinks in the winter where we would skate into the dark winter nights, and we were reluctant to come in as soon as dinner was called. Then in the summer, he would build little pools made of tree branches and sheets of plastic. In that big backyard, he also shared his love of football, and as he called it, soccer. He had played semi-professional football in Scotland and was obsessed with following in his footsteps. It drove me to play all the way from when I was 5 all the way through college. That connection was an incredibly important one for me. It was one of the ways that I felt that I was connected to him. He loved soccer and continued to play on teams into his 40s, which is pretty significant. His good friend, Jeff Rowden, remembered that they shared a passion for footy, as he called it, and it was a strong bond. They were on a team, as you had mentioned, in Point Claire on the island of Montreal, and that team became the division champs in 1976. And that was the year my father turned 40. So, as Dan said, I mean, who would know that he would pass, because he just had so much energy. We thought he would be young forever, So in Montreal, my father worked at McGill University with Dan in the Cancer Research Unit, and he again took us on the weekends to free up my mother from her brethren, and we continued to go to the lab, but at this point we weren't scraping lab tables. We brought our roller skates with us, and we had one skateboard that we shared. We got it for Christmas, and we all shared it. Sometimes you'd see us going down the driveway, all 3 of us, 3 or 4, we couldn't fit 4 on, but 3 or 4 of us on the skateboard. So the building in Montreal was a circular building. And so we would just skate around that thing as fast as we could, or run around, or be on the skateboard. And we'd harass all the scientists and all the doctors. So that's what we did, including, of course, Dan. And I know we were a handful. So in Montreal, we built this really strong community of people. And so among the families of the research unit, we did so many things on the weekends and things together. And when we moved from Montreal to DC, we had built-in friends. On the weekends in DC, we would have massive card games where the kids and adults all joined in. And there was always like a cacophony of laughter and joking, and I'm sure very off-colored jokes. So my father's humor is what he'll always be remembered for. He carried a distinct flavor of Scottish wit. He relished on making people laugh, whether through an off-color song, jokes, or his famous jigs. He was willing to make a spectacle of himself if it would make my mother, especially my mother, and us laugh. He was funny, loving, and a social character. He was all about family, and when he was battling pneumonia and had a few moments of lucidity, he turned to me as I was kind of breaking down, and he said clearly, "It's okay. We're Hayes, and we'll get through anything together." And that's true. We've always been a bonded group that love each other unconditionally. We fight, we forgive, we protect each other fiercely. Our family grew exponentially with 6 grandchildren, grandparents, uncles, aunts, and of course important significant others. Not to mention the many people we consider family that are in this room today. We started at 6 and now we are 5. We'll miss my dad incredibly. His self-deprecating humor, his intelligence, his worrisome adoration, and his love of life and people will be terribly missed. I hope every day that you can rejoice in the simple fact that you're here. Sing, tell jokes, stories, and do a jig to make someone laugh. If he were here, that's what he would be doing.
Would anyone else like to share a memory of their time with Don? You can either stand in place or come to the podium. Anyone?
One simple one. I'm Bruce Lustig. I'm a rabbi. I live next door to the Hayes. Better part of 25 years. And I'm wearing the sunglasses just because I came from the eye doctor, not to be incognito. In the Bible, in Genesis, we find a story about Joseph going off. And he meets an unnamed character, a man. And because that man says they went that way, all of history changes. He knows, and his destiny all happens because this unnamed individual. I think of Mr. Hay, and I only call him Mr. Hay, in that same way. There are hundreds of thousands of people he, I am sure, encountered. They probably didn't know who he was. He probably didn't tell them his name. But when they left his presence, their destiny was a little better because he made them laugh. He made them smile. He was so generous of spirit. It's a great loss, but it also is a great gift. So we thank you for his life, his blessings, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to share.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to share?
Yeah, I'll say something. Thank you.
I don't know what I'm gonna say here. I just want to thank everybody for coming and honoring my father and my mother and offering condolences and support and everybody just being here. That's what I was thinking. I mean, I didn't think I was gonna get up here, so I don't have any notes, but I've got thoughts, and it's funny because one of the thoughts that I had, people said the same thing tonight or today that I was thinking, and the one common thread was my dad's humor. He was really funny, and he got that from his dad. And the thing was they weren't always funny, but they tried to be. And they would make, my dad wasn't afraid to make a joke that people didn't understand. And when they went to my mom and dad, they moved into a senior facility. And there was one guy there that liked to joke. And you see, I had met this guy, and he reminded me of my dad because he would tell jokes. Sometimes they were funny, and sometimes they just they just didn't hit the mark. And so when my dad met this fellow named Mike, he pointed to him and he said, "You're a troublemaker." And so yeah, my dad was a troublemaker, but it was good trouble. Like there were times in his life where it wasn't good trouble. I mean, he came from a tough neighborhood in Scotland, and there were, the Catholics and the Protestants. Not that my family were religious, but there were some, at the football matches, the Celtics and the Rangers, they would have brawls. So my dad learned to scrap. And I can't even believe this is coming out of me.
No, it doesn't.
Yes?
No.
All right, okay, I'll say one more thing. My sister mentioned how it was just the six of us who left Scotland and came to Newfoundland, and that bonded us. And my mom and dad looked after us so well all our lives. And my sister also mentioned the unconditional love that we kind of grew into it. We all grew as a family and grew as people. And Corjane mentioned also, or Corky, that we would have fights, arguments. But my dad he would always come, he would be the first one, like when him and I would get in an argument, he'd be the first one to come and apologize and give me a hug. And there were so many times where we hugged and we cried together. And there was a while, like growing up, where when you're younger, the parents tell the kids they love each other. But a lot of families, they don't say that. But it really doesn't matter whether you say I love you or not, because you all know it. But the thing is we started, 1980s, we started saying I love you. And so so when he passed, I said I loved him in the hospital, but I hadn't actually said I love him. The thing is it doesn't matter because we all knew it. And the people that you love, they know you love them, and you know that they love them. And I'm not saying this is a regret, but the lady was talking about all the work my dad did at home, and he was self-taught. Nobody trained him. His father wasn't mechanical or good with tools so much, but my dad learned all that all by himself. And he built us the bedrooms, not only in Washington here, but in Newfoundland. He finished the basement and made rooms for my brother and me, and he didn't, there's people here from the building trades, including my mother, who know all about how to space a joist 16 inches apart and top dead center. My dad would build stuff, and I don't know if he used a level, all worked. The joists weren't 16 inches apart. Maybe they were 14 or 18, but he got it done. And I remember he built a deck when the year he retired in 2000. At the same time as working, he built a deck, and and I was pretty amazed that he built this deck and poured the footers and lined up all the footers so that everything was straight. That deck is still standing today, and it's gonna be standing for a long time. And yeah, I guess I'll get back to the point I was making. It's not so much a regret, but I think I speak for all of us that he was our hero. And I wish I had let him know that he was my hero, but I didn't. But
He knew.
yeah, but he knew. Yeah, and a hero isn't doing it for the. Anyway, so I thank everyone for coming, and thanks for letting me talk. And of course, Jane said the 5 of us, but the 6 of us, we all thank you, and we all love you.
Anyone else who wishes to speak?
So I would just like to, again, quick, I just wanted to say, thank you to the Hay family and to, Donald for, I'm a childhood friend. I grew up with Jackie, and my sister and I were at their house all the time. And I think mostly because they just, with all the commotion, 2 more kids, I don't even know that they knew we were there. And that's the way we liked it. And the love that they talk about, like I didn't have that at home, and so my sister and I naturally gravitated towards it, and it changed our lives. It really did. It is something that I will take with me forever. It's a part of who I am in such a formative time. When you talk about the generosity of spirit, it's my life definitely is on a different trajectory because of it, because of those years. So, and that's what I would say. Thank you to Donald and Jen and the family.
Anybody else? Thank you to all who did share. My Heart's in the Highlands by Robert Burns. Farewell to the Highlands, farewell to the North, the birthplace of valor, the country of worth. Wherever I wander, wherever I rove, the hills of the Highlands, forever I love. My heart's in the Highlands, my heart is not here. My heart's in the Highlands, a chasing the deer. A chasing the wild deer and following the roe. My heart's in the Highlands, wherever I go. Farewell to the mountains, high covered in snow. Farewell to the straths and the green valleys below. Farewell to the forests and wild hanging woods. Farewell to the torrents and loud pouring floods. My heart's in the Highlands, my heart is not here. My heart's in the Highlands, a chasing the deer, a chasing the wild deer and following the roe. My heart's in the Highlands, wherever I go. Final goodbyes are never easy. We search our brains for the right words, but they seldom come to us. We think about Donald, and the person that he was, and the laughter that he shared, and how he improved our lives. And we miss him. We know he cared about us all. If we needed anything and asked him, he was there to help us. That's just how he was. We will miss him. Every day we will miss him. We will hold tight to the memories we will have of him. We will think of the time we spent with him, the laughter we shared with him, and the love he gave us unconditionally. Our hearts, while broken now, will slowly heal. Donald will be there in our hearts and minds, and we will cherish his memory forever. Bagpipes. Something stirs within me when I hear the bagpipes play. They reach down deep inside my heart, whether close or far away. And as I stand and listen, something happens deep inside. Their music flows into my soul and fills my heart with pride. But something else is happening, something you cannot see. For my heart begins to wonder and long once more to be free. And I know it was very difficult for him to give up his homeland, drag you and his kids all the way to the so I'm glad to. And I think everyone else is too. As love remain with us because love itself lives on, and cherished memories never fade because the loved one's gone. Those we love can never be more than a thought apart. For as long as there is memory, they'll live on in our heart. You can shed tears that he is gone, or you can smile because he has lived. You can close your eyes and pray that he will come back, or you can open your eyes and see all that he has left. Your heart can be empty because you can't see him, or you can be full of the love that you shared. You can turn your back on tomorrow and live yesterday, or you can be happy for tomorrow because of yesterday. You can remember him and only that he is gone, or you can cherish his memory and let it live on. You can cry, close your mind, be empty and turn your back, or you could do what he would want, smile, open your eyes, love, and go on. I know it's not going to be easy going forward, but it seems like you just want to look at the past and remember. But I believe that Donald's going to always be there with you. I mean, he's going to always help you remember things that maybe you push back in your mind. And then one day they're just going to pop up, and that's him. And I just want you to be aware of that. There's a Scottish saying, if there is righteousness in the heart, there will be beauty in the character. If there is beauty in the character, there will be harmony in the home. If there is harmony in the home, there will be order in the nation. If there is order in the nation, there will be peace in the world. And I know we all want that, peace in the world. We will remember you, Donald, in the rising of the sun and its going down, in the blowing of the wind, in the chill of winter, in the opening of buds and the rebirth of spring, in the blueness of the sky and in the warmth of summer, in the rustling of leaves and the beauty of autumn, in the beginning of the year and when it ends, when we are weary and in need of strength, when we are lost and sick at heart, when we have joys we yearn to share. Yes, we will remember Donald. For as long as we live, Donald too shall live, for he is a part of all who remember him. When we discuss his silence, quiet sadness, longing for one more day, one more word, one more touch. We may not understand why Donald left before we were ready to say goodbye. But little by little, we begin to remember not just that he died, but that he lived, and his life gave us memories too beautiful to forget. Many of us are of that age when we are saying goodbye to our friends. And it's hard. It's really hard. We don't know what the future holds for any of us. But I do know that he will watch you all keep smiling and keep remembering his jokes. So try and feel no guilt and laughter. You know how much you care. Feel no sorrow and a smile that he's not here to share. You cannot grieve forever. He would not want you to. He'd hope that you could carry on the way you always do. So talk about the good times and the way you showed you cared, the days you spent together, all the happiness you shared. Let memories surround you. A word someone may say will suddenly recapture time, an hour, a day. It brings him back as clearly as though he were still right here, and fills you with the feeling that he is always near. For if you keep those moments, you will never be apart, and he will live forever, locked safely within your heart. We let you go, Donald, into the freedom of the wind and sunshine, into the dance of the stars and planets, into the wind's breath in the hands of the star maker. May the sun bring you new energy every day, bringing light into the darkness of your soul. May the moon softly restore you by night, bathing you in the glow of restful sleep and peaceful dreams. May the rain wash away your worries and cleanse the hurt that sits in your heart. May the breeze blow new strength into your being, and may you believe in the courage of yourself. May you walk gently through the world, keeping your loved one with you always, knowing that you are never parted in the beating of your heart. Each of you find peace in your life. I believe he's going to find a way to let you know it's okay. I hope your heart is open to that when it happens. I'm not a singer, but Donna wants me to say this to Jean. You are my sunshine, my only sunshine. Make me happy when skies are gray. You'll never know, dear, how much I love you. Please don't take my sunshine away. I leave you with the Scottish blessing. These things I warmly wish for you: someone to love, some work to do, a bit of sun, a bit of cheer, and a guardian angel always near. This concludes the services here today. On behalf of the family, thank you all so much for being here. There will be a reception. We have to get this room turned over to do the reception. So I'm going to ask if everybody could kind of shift themselves out into that room, over to this room, so the staff can come in and change everything over. Thank you all for being here.
Okay, here we go. Do a jig. Oh God, if he falls down, I'll never hear the end of it. And many more. Happy birthday!
This is for the ship.
That's for you.
There's another one coming.
Oh my God!
That's great.
Plates?